Hello, everyone. Glad to have you here. Today, I'm gonna talk about creating or recreating this scene that I created. We're not on the screen anymore. Here, there we go. All right. So I once did a presentation, and I wanted to come up with something new. So I created this, and it was a little bit ambitious. So I created this within like 4 days. It's all rendered on my mobile machine here on the MacBook. And today I want to show you how I created this part. So it looks like quite busy and everything, but I think now I'm going to start embarrassing myself by showing you how easy the setup is. Right? Okay, so let's jump into Cinema 4D, and the plan is to create that from scratch. And the goal is to have the finished rendering in the end. So let's see if it will work, and let's see if I can make it in 40 minutes, right? Okay, let's get started. So basically, it's just a cloth simulation with some clones on it, right? And yeah, I'm just gonna start. I'm gonna start by creating a tube, and I'm gonna make it a lot wider when it comes to the outer radius, and I'm gonna make the inner radius a little bit lower. I'm also gonna lower the height to 20, and I'm gonna create some fillet here. Let me double check the topology by hitting NB. That's the shortcut for showing the grow shading with lines. So I will need something like that. And because it's 20 high, I want this to be down by 10 centimeters, because this way, the top plane is at 0. Right, that's our collision geometry for a plane. I'm just going to create a plane, and I'm going to make that plane, let's say 60 by 60 in segments. And that's already most of the modeling for this whole project. Right, so one thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make this one here a cloth by right-clicking, going to Simulation Text and Cloth, and the tube will be a collider. So now we are here, and if I press play, you can see that this is happening. So it's not just going down here, it's also jumping around, and this is coming from the thickness that is part of the cloth pack. So the thickness is set to 1.5 by default. We can increase that to 2, but then to get rid of that jump here in the beginning, we would have to bring it up by 1 centimeter, like so, so that the radius is not colliding with the collision geometry. Right, so let's hit play, and you see, okay, it works. But it's not being sucked through that hole. So we need to do that somehow. And the way I did that was by giving all of the mass to the point in the middle, right? And I did that by creating a vertex map. And in previous versions, you had to make the plane editable to do that. Now I can do that directly on the plane with Cinema 4D 2023. So let's do that. I'm going to right-click, then I go to Other Tags, and create a vertex map. A vertex map is basically a map that stores a weight value on each of the points, on each of the vertices, and then you can use that weight map on other parameters. You can use it in shading, you can use it in simulation, and many other places. So the way I would do that now is simply by creating a spherical field. So let's create that, and I'm gonna bring down the size to 1. And now it's just the center point here that is weighted by 100%. Now what I can do is I could adjust the segments of that plane like so, and it would still be the middle point that is weighted, right? I'm gonna go back with 60 by 60 because that's a value that works. And now we need to assign this map to cloth. And here in the cloth tag, we have a parameter that is called mass. And if you watch closely, you can see that all of these parameters have a chevron, so we can unfold them, and then we can add a vertex map here. So what happens when I add this map in here is that it will have, the whole thing will have a mass of 1 here on the middle point and no mass on the other points. And now if I play, it's gone. And by the way, it's always important to make the sound effects. Cool. So it's a little bit fast, right? So let me play with the settings of the simulation. I'm going to hit Control D, which will bring up the project settings. And in here, we can play with the settings for the simulation. I go to Scene Settings, and I will bring down gravity. Not to 0, but I will just bring it down to a value of, let's say, 80 or so. And now we see that it's doing this. We need more time here. So let's go with, so let's say, 300 frames in total. And that works. Right, I like that. We can go a little lower with, or a little higher with the bendiness. Well, let me bring this up to, let's say, 20 and hit play again. And I would say that works for me. Cool. We don't even need all of these frames, so let's go back to 200 or so. And now let's already find a good angle. So I'm going to go to, let's say, this frame, and let's see what a good angle could be. And I think something like that is good. We can use something like that, right? Then I'm going to create a camera. And I'm also going to set this up to come with another focal length. Let's go with 50. And let's play this back. And I think, yeah, that's good. That's good. All right, maybe we can zoom in a little bit more. So the reason why I'm creating the camera already is right now I'm just recreating this one scene, but I used this simulation in many other scenes. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to export this as an alembic so that I have a scene where I can be sure that everything is set up, and then I just throw it into other scenes and create the scenes from there. Right, so how can I export that? It's pretty simple. I go to File, Export, Alembic, and I want to use all frames here, cameras, normals, UVs, that's all fine. I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to save this here in my IBC folder. This is our cloth. I'm going to hit Save, and now it's exporting that whole thing as an alembic. So here we go. Now it's exported, and I'm going to create a new scene. Going to bring up my Finder and go up by 1 and just bring in my cloth alembic file, hit OK, and there it is. So that's my file. I can now scrub through this, which is really cool, and I can use that in all of the other scenes if I would create them. Right, the first thing I do here is I will bring up the Phong angle so that it's a little bit nicer. Well, that's the wrong object, so let me just clean up the scene a little bit. Here we go. And I'm going to bring up the Phong angle here in the cloth. Maybe I have to make this editable first and then delete the normal tag. Here we go. Right, so now let's have a look through that camera. And maybe let's also throw this into a subdivision surface. And now we can see, all right, that's looking quite cool, right? Good. So the next thing I want to do is I want to create clones or matrices on this whole piece of cloth, but they should only be visible in those areas that are convex, right? And the way I can do that is, first of all, I will create all of these matrices by creating a matrix object. And I'm also going to set this to object mode and then use the subdivision surface to clone these matrices on. And then I'm going to go up a lot, like so. You can see it's still fluent because it's matrices and it's cached alembic simulation. So now the next thing is, how can I restrict these matrices, or scale these matrices so that they only appear in convex areas of the cloth. I'm going to use an effector for that, a plane effector. I'm going to place it here, and I'm going to set the parameters up so that we don't affect position, but we affect scale. I want to set the scale to be uniform and bring it down to -1, and now everything is gone. It's still there, it's just scaled down. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use fields to define the areas where these matrices are supposed to show up. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to bring in the subdivision surface object here. And now you can already see, all right, they are coming back. And when I select it here in the fields list, you can see that I can actually adjust the size based on points, on surface, on volumes, and let me zoom in here, based on curvature. So I go with curvature, and let's have a look. So first of all, that's the inverted effect. So let me go to the remapping tab here and just invert it. Now it's on the convex parts. And I go back here and set up the radius a little bit. So let's go with something like this. I think that's okay. Let me scrub the timeline, and you can see the effect already. So that's basically the setup, right? So the next thing I want to do is I want to create the actual geometry for those crystals. And I always like to do that in another scene. I'm going to save this here before I do that. Close, that's okay. And just create a new scene. And in here, I'm going to create a cylinder, make the radius 1 and the height 20. And then I'm going to bring down the height segments to 1 and the rotation segments to 6. And here you can see that we now have this shape. So I want this shape to be cut in the middle, but like not a straight cut, but one that is a little bit tilted. So I'm going to use a Voronoi fracture object for that. And let me add that. So I'm going to use the Voronoi fracture. I'm going to hold down the Alt key to create it as a parent. And now you can see that the whole thing is fractured. And we go to the Sources tab, and we delete this default point generator. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a spline and use that as the source for fracturing. So here's my spline, and I'm just going to drag and drop that into the sources. And now you can see that we got a lot of slices, and this is because I'm creating 20 points on this spline. But I just need 2. Here we go. Now we created a cut, and the cool thing is that this is very art directable. So let me select those 2 points here. I can still move that up and down. Maybe let me bring in the line so you can see it better. We can do something like this, and then I'm going to create a copy of that one, make it editable and invisible, and then I'm going to do something like this to create like a steeper angle here. Right, that's basically it. I'm going to make this editable too. I can delete the spline now, and I can also just bring these things out here of the nulls and delete a few tags, and there we go. These are our objects. So the first thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to select these 2 objects, and I want to align the axes first. The axes always have to be like at the bottom of the crystal, and they should be centered and aligned so that Y is pointing up. And the way I can do that is simply by rotating these, right? And then I'm going to select all of them, and then I go to Tools, Axis, Axis Center, and I'm going to adjust the alignment first. I'm going to set it to World. And now you can see that the axes are pointing up. I'm going to hit Execute here, and then I'm going to deactivate alignment and just bring the axes to the bottom of these objects. Execute again, and here we go. Now I can reset the transform here by using the shortcut Alt-0. And you can see that we now have our crystals. So let me place them next to each other so you can see that. I'm going to do that by hitting a num. Num is going to use the index of the selection, and then I can just multiply that by 5 or something, and I will have them next to each other. And yeah, you can see that's looking quite cool. So for this one, we might go to points mode and make it a little bit bigger. And maybe also this one here, make it a little bit bigger. And now we're just gonna reset the transforms again, Alt-0, and I'm gonna make the other crystals a little bit smaller, and I'm gonna place them wherever I want them. And I want these crystals to create some sort of a flower around this main crystal. Something like that, maybe. We can scale them up a little bit more, like so. And then I'm going to rotate them so that it's looking a little bit more random, like so. Let's go with this one, do something like that, and this one, do something like that. So that's basically it. That's a crystal flower. So I create a null, name it crystal flower, and make all of these objects a child of that. And now I can just copy that over to my cloth scene, paste it, and scale it down a little bit. Right, so now I have everything that I need for modeling. The next thing that I need to do is to connect the matrix object with this crystal flower. So for now, I'm just going to make it a child, not because this is doing anything, but because I want this to be I want the object manager to be clean. So then I'm going to copy out these two to have a little bit of variation. These are my 3 crystal objects now. So I've got 2 crystals that are just a single crystal and 1 crystal flower. And next I'm going to clone them onto the matrix object. So the way I'm going to do this is, first of all, I'm going to switch the renderer to Redshift. And now when I start the IPR, you can see, well, we have that cloth, we have that crystal, but the crystal is not on the cloth. And the way I can make that happen is by right-clicking the matrix and go to Render Tags, and there is a Redshift object tag in here. So I use that, and I'm going to set it to Custom Objects. I'm going to lock the Attributes Manager and just drag and drop all of these crystals in. And now you can see that they are cloned onto this thing. Right, but they are not pointing upwards. So I have to fix that, and the easiest way to fix that is by going to the matrix object. Of course, I need to unlock the attributes manager again, and then I think it was the pitch being set to -90. Nope, it was something else. Let me try this one. It's always the last one that you try, right? That's the rule. And if you think, now I'm clever, I'm going to do it the other way around, it's going to be the last still. That's the rule. So something isn't, okay, it's the coordinates. I did something wrong. So instead of using the coordinates, I have to use the transform, of course. So in here, let me try it again. I think it was this one. Oh, I remembered correctly. Whew. Good. So that's looking good. We've got some crystals here. I think we can scale them up a little bit. And another thing we should do, we should randomize them. And the way I'm going to do that is by using a random effector. So I select the matrix object, and I create a random effector from the effectors menu, like so. And I'm not going to affect the positions, but I'm going to affect the rotations. And let me see which one is the correct one now. I think this one, this time it could be this one. And it's not. Let me go with this one. There we go, that's looking better. But I think it's still not the right angle. This one is looking a little bit better. Yeah. And I'm going to set the other two to, let's say, 10 degrees. And then I also want to randomize the scale a little bit. So let's go with the uniform scale. And let's go with something like 0.2. So now I have this. This is the finished modeling. And we can now start setting up the materials already. So I'm 20 minutes in, including introduction, and the setup is already working. Right. So let me bring up the material manager, and I'm going to go to Create, Redshift, Materials, Standard Material. And I'm going to assign this standard material to our subdivision surface for the cloth. So we're going to start with the rock texture. This also means that we can deactivate the matrix for now. All right. So we got this. And I want to open the node editor. So let me go to my nodes layout here. And let's create that material from here. I'm going to bring up the asset browser because I have the textures right here. And I'm going to use all of them except for ambient occlusion. We don't need that in this case. And I'm just going to drag and drop them in. We don't necessarily need the previews. So let's get rid of them. All right. So I'm going to start with the base color that's on top. Then the next one is going to be roughness, then the normal, and then the height. The base color is easy. We can just plug it into here. Now you can see, all right, that's maybe a little bit too much color in there. So I want to colorize it. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to double click and I'm going to search for a ramp node. Just put it onto the existing wire and it will work. And now you can see that we have a black and white texture here. I'm gonna scroll down here a little bit because one thing you have to know is that the ramp here, when you create it, is always with smooth interpolation. So if you want to remap color, it is a better idea to set the interpolation to linear. And then, wait for it to update. Yeah, here we go. It's a little bit brighter. And then you can also set up those colors here. So we can actually set this one to be, let's say, something like that. All right. Oh, that's too dark. Let's just go back. We keep this. Then the next one is roughness. So we bring in the roughness to the reflection roughness. And here is one thing you need to know. By default, Redshift is always rendering in ACES. So there is something you need to know about textures. Whenever you use a texture in a color channel, you don't need to do anything. It's tone mapping the texture correctly, but for everything that is driving another parameter, it's better to set the color space here to raw. Then it's going to use the actual data. So here we go. You can see that some of the speculars disappeared because of that. All right, they didn't disappear correctly. It's just a different roughness value now. Right, so let's go on with the normal. So I'm going to hit C to bring up the nodes commander here. Actually, double clicking is the better way, but I just got used to using the shortcut C. I'm going to create a bump map node. And I'm going to pipe that into the bump map. And I'm going to pipe the normal into the bump map node here as the input. And now it's important to understand that we are using a height field. A black and white image is always a a height field because it's just containing height information. And that's pretty much it for this one. And the last one we need to wire up is displacement. So I'm gonna double click here, gonna type in displacement, and I'm gonna place the node here. Bring in our height as a text map, and then wire up the displacement with the displacement of the output node. And you can see that no displacement is happening. And this is because we need to set it up for the geometry. Right, so I think we're good here. Let me have a look at the material tag. And I'm going to bring up the tiles. I don't know, 10 by 10? Seems to be good. All right, and the next one is making the displacement work. And I can do that by right-clicking on this object, the subdivision surface object here, and then I go to render tags again, and I again use a Redshift object tag. And in the Redshift object tag, there is a geometry section. And in here, we can like override the geometry, we can override the tessellation. I usually don't use screen space adaptive because it can slow down the viewport sometimes. I'm going to bring down the minimum edge length to something like 0.5, and I'm going to enable displacement. And now we should see something in a second. Is it working already? Let's see. We need to set up two more things. So one thing is, in the displacement, we didn't touch the change range, the remapping. Right now, black is like the original surface, and everything that is brighter than black is just coming out. But what I actually want is, I want 50% gray to be like the original surface, and black values to be pushed in, and white values to be pushed out. And the way I can do that is simply by adjust the new range min to -1. Now you can see that something happened. All right, and the rest can be set up here in the displacement section. We can just bring this up to maybe 2 to make the displacement effect a little bit more. But now you can also see already that we're not actually really seeing what we're doing. So I'm going to go back to my standard layout, and I'm going to start lighting the scene. So let me add a dome light. And this will already add a lot of depth to the whole scene, right? Simply adding a dome light. Good. Maybe we can go a little bit higher with the tiling. Let me go with 15 by 15. Let's see if that still looks good. Yeah, I like that more. Right, and the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna colorize the light here. So let's go to the object tab in the light, and I'm gonna set this up to be a little bit bluish, and I'm also gonna bring down the intensity to something much lower. So now you can, well, here on the monitor we can see it quite well. All right, but the next thing I want to do is I want to add an infinite light and just create some sort of rim lighting here. So let me set this up or align it so that we are creating a nice rim lighting. Maybe we have to go a little bit more to here to see it better. Here we go. So let's see what angle will work. So here I think that's something that's quite well bringing out all of the details and also all of the like separate like silhouettes of the creases, if that's the right way of saying that. And I'm gonna bring up the intensity a bit. Let's say 1.5. And I'm also gonna bring the color to a value that is a little bit colder. All right, maybe we can also bring up the intensity of the dome light. Something like that. All right, that's looking good. Now let's activate our matrix again. All right. And the last thing we need to do here is actually to create a crystal material. So this is our rock. And we're going to create a new Redshift material standard. And this is going to be our diamond material. And in this diamond material, first of all, of course, we have to assign it. In this material, I'm going to bring down I'm going to bring up the transmission. That's what I want. And once I do that, you can see that we already got these diamonds. All right? And, well, the next thing we need to do is we need to maybe set this to an IOR that is more like diamond. And I'm not exactly sure about the index of refraction of diamond. I think it is something like 2.4, but we can find that out. Let me create another scene and just create a Cinema 4D standard material, because in here, in transparency, we can set this to diamond. Yeah, 2.417. 2.417. 2.417. There we go. Let's activate the rendering again. And now we have the right index of refraction. We are 30 minutes in. I almost finished my presentation. All right. So the next thing we can do, so usually what I would do in the diamond material is I would also add some dispersion. For diamond, the dispersion value should be around 60. And this way, yeah, we have a little bit of rainbow colors in the diamonds and so on. But it has an impact on render times. All right, so the next thing that I can do here is I can maybe set up the camera. So with the camera selected, let me make the camera editable here to bring it out of the alembic context. And I'm just going to pick the focus. And I think we can use, I want this to be focused. And I'm also going to bring down the f-stop, let's say, to 4. And now to make this depth of field happen, I am going to add a Redshift camera tag. So let's go to camera tags, Redshift camera. And in here, there is a bokeh section. We can override like the global bokeh and just derive the focus distance and the COC radius from the camera. So you can already see that we have some depth of field in here. I think it can be a little bit more. So let me go to the camera and just bring down the f-stop. And that's basically it. Maybe, so for my taste, there could be a few more diamonds. So let me add a few more here. Wait, we disable the rendering here for a second. And just double the amount. And yeah, I think that works quite well. I mean, the rest that we can do now is just tweaking everything. But actually, yeah, that wouldn't change the technique that is behind that whole thing. So I'm actually a little bit proud of myself because I finished in less than 40 minutes. So I think when I started creating, it was like 32 minutes ago. So, right. that brings me to the question, what am I going to show you next? Because I've got some time left. That's a luxury problem. So I can show you how I created the other ones, right? So let me create a new scene here. And I'm, again, just going to, well, actually, we can just copy out these two objects here, maybe these three, and just put them here. So we've got a new scene. We can look through that. We can get rid of the tags. And here we have the very same angle. And so what I can do now is I can show you how I created the scene with the trees, but that's basically exactly the same, but instead of using the field to restrict the trees to the convex areas, I just didn't do that. So it's just the trees. Let me go back to here, and yeah, here you can see it's pretty much the same. So the other ones are also interesting because they are just using cloners and stuff. But one thing that I really like to show you is, let me bring this out here. So here we've got the geometry that is very, very rough. And there was a time when I created some assets, some node-based assets, and I created one that was a Greeble. So this one, a Greeble Subdivision. And when I add this as a child here, you can see what it's doing is basically it's randomly picking polygons, and then it's subdividing them. And you can adjust the iterations here. So then a selection of these subdivided polygons will be picked and will be subdivided again. And then I can do that again and again and again. And I can adjust the chance here. I can adjust the chance multiplier for the last iteration. That's also something that is quite cool. And I can adjust the seed. And this is basically how I created one of these of the other versions here. So what I did next is I still kept using that workflow. By the way, I can share this Greeble Subdivision. I think we can make it available in the video description later, available to download. And so I'm gonna search for an inset, or maybe let me show you where you can get all of these node assets or C node based assets for the object manager. And you can use, or you can create them from the geometry modifiers. And yeah, let me just make this list view, and here we can see all of them. So we've got a lot. One of them that I want to use is inset, so I'm going to use inset here. And you can see that it's insetting no, it's not insetting everything. It's insetting those smallest ones. Let me try to just use the selection string all instead. And now you can see that everything has got an inset. I'm not going to use the proportional one, but the one where I can type in a value. Let me go really low here. And now you can see that everything has been inset, and now I want to extrude that next. So let me extrude it. Extrude, here we go. And you can see that, oh, well, this is not going to work as I expected, because whenever you use those C nodes, capsules, the thing is that everything here is procedural. When I set this to all now, then it would also select or extrude those polygons that are now inset here. So what I need to do first is to create a new selection, and then I inset this, use this and use it as the active selection for all of the following operations. And the way you can do that is by using, from the geometry selection modifiers, the select node or select capsule. So I'm going to place the select right after the Greeble subdivision. And in here, I say that the selection string is going to be all. So I'm going to select all polygons after the Greeble subdivision and add it to the active selection, right? And now I can use default here, because default is always using either an existing selection, or if there is no existing selection, it will use all polygons, similar to all of the other modeling commands. Right, and now you can see that I already extruded all of these polygons, but not the areas of the inset. And now I can just bring this up by, let's say, 5 or so. It's always cool when you say 5 and type 10. Right, here we go. Add some variation. And here we go. That's pretty much it. Maybe we can also just delete the font. So here we go. Still, everything is procedural. Yeah, it has to recalculate everything at any frame, but let's say we set this to Redshift now and add a dome light and render it. Then you can see what this looks like. So there is another Greeble capsule in here that is shipped with Cinema 4D. It's this one. Yeah, I just like the idea of having a Greeble that is based on subdivisions of quads. So it's pretty cool what you can do with that. And yeah, as I said, we can share that in the video description of the recording then, of the rewind. Right, and that's pretty much everything I have. I still have time left, so I'm gonna tell you that yeah, I work for the training team at Maxon, and we do cool stuff there. So let me jump to the browser. So here we have the Maxon events webpage, maxon.net/events, and here you can see all of the webinars that we are doing, all of the live events that we are attending. All of our webinars are for free. You can just join them. Some of them are streamed on YouTube, some of them are streamed via GoToWebinar, and you have to register for them first. But you can do that here from the website. If you want to catch up with something, or just miss something you want to rewatch or whatnot, you can go to the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel, and on here we have the recordings of everything we ever did. So this is worth of a gazillion hours of training, and yeah, just go there, watch it. We are covering all of the Maxon products. We are also covering like more general workflows, color workflows, and also cinematography, everything. Whenever you want to learn something, this is the place to go. Right, and with that being said, I can say thank you very much.